Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
First off, a quick word on this. MPs are going to get a vote on Brexit. That is a vote on the terms on which we plan to leave the EU. But what signs yet that London's interests are at the forefront of the government's mind as it starts to think about these complex negotiations? Dawn, any view on that?
Well, I think that it's lucky that we have Sadiq pushing the London perspective, but also in Parliament we have to hold the government to account. I think, to be honest, the government's just in a mess completely on the whole issue. The reason why we're getting a vote on the terms is because, as an opposition, we put forward a good argument and the government had to accept it. But all in all, I think David Davis was a bit pathetic, really, in his comeback. But the government's in a mess.
Should London should it be getting important treatment, prominence in any kind of negotiations in terms of Brexit because of its economic status?
No, absolutely not. London is a part of the United Kingdom. In fact, it's our capital city. And although in London not everyone voted for Brexit, most people didn't, you have to look at the entire interests of the UK. We had a democratic vote. There's going to be a Brexit. We're leaving the EU. We need to get a good agreement for trade and cooperation to benefit the whole country.
Would you expect it to have, though, kind of, if there were sort of, we're talking about seats at tables or negotiating tables, and Scotland and Wales would be having a prominence in those discussions, would you expect London to have a kind of parity?
No, not at all. The long-term interests of our country is to make our own laws, trade globally again, that's our future markets, decide our own immigration policy. All those things are a United Kingdom-wide issue. Of course, London can express its views, but it's the government of the United Kingdom that has to make those decisions.
That just shows an example of why the Tory party is in such a mess. I mean, London is our financial capital. Of course,
we're a mess compared to the Labour Party.
Of course, it needs to have some special consideration. It's crazy.
Let's move on. It didn't happen last week, but it looks like it's going to happen this week. Of course, it now feels like it won't be much of a surprise if Theresa May and her special cabinet subcommittee decide that Heathrow shall have its third runway. It's been chewed over now so much, but the decision would only set in train a complex process, as Tanjil Rashid reports.
After years of deliberation and delays, the government's decision on airport expansion is finally expected next week. And in all likelihood, it's going to be this place, Heathrow. But there are a number of reasons why those awaiting a third runway here might be in for the long haul. The Prime Minister is being accused of further dithering after she signalled this week that Parliament won't vote until winter 2017 to 2018.
There is then a formal process that has to be undertaken. So the government will identify its preferred option of site. That will then go to a statutory consultation. The government will then consider the results of the statutory consultation and bring forward an airport's national planning statement on which this House will vote.
Critics say the Prime Minister's running scared of a mutiny within the party. She's relaxing cabinet collective responsibility to allow the likes of Boris Johnson and Justine Greening to speak out against her decision. There's also a rebellion threatened in Richmond. Zac Goldsmith has pledged to step down and fight a by-election. Richmond Tories this week said they'd back him as an independent over any official candidate. And then there are the legal challenges from local councils.
No matter what party's in control, the government cannot break the law. That's what the judge told them in 2010, and that's what will happen if they try to move on without dealing with those issues.
The provision of a third airport for London is no problem, according...
Next week's decision might seem historic to some, but this wouldn't be the first time governments have announced the third runway at Heathrow. Just as the idea of expanding Heathrow seems like it might finally take off, there's every reason to believe it could come crashing down.
Andrew Rossendale, let's kick off with you here. You think the time has come to go for this?
Look, this has gone on for far too long. We need to make long-term decisions in the interest of not just London, but the whole of the country. Whilst we're delaying these decisions, we are potentially damaging our economy. And I think it really is the time to make a decision and get on with it.
Almost in terms of managing the expectations, people won't now be surprised if this week Theresa May says let's go for Heathrow after all the controversy.
Yeah, but that's an understatement in terms of managing the decision. It's taken so long, I agree. Just make a decision and then let's talk about the decision that needs to be made. But I mean, I don't think that Heathrow should be the priority decision. I think it should actually be Gatwick.
Presumably, when you were back in 2009 or 2010, when you were trying to be first elected, you were supporting it then, though, were you? No, you never did.
And that was even before I knew how many people died because of poor air quality around my area, and it's almost 10,000 people a year. And I don't think we can overlook that. I think that has to be a real consideration into airport expansion.
But you're a former, union official. I mean, why do people like Unite, the biggest union, why do they say this is absolutely crucial and useful and good for the economy and for jobs?
But it is. We do need expansion, and it is important and crucial for jobs. It doesn't necessarily all have to be at Heathrow. It might be a case in the future, and it's probably going to take a decade anyway to be built, but it might be a case in the future that both airports might need expanding. But I think we really have to tackle the air quality issue.
A lot of senior Labour figures, when they decided on this policy those several years ago, knew or didn't feel it was going to happen either, because they thought there would be legal challenges or the air quality would be an issue. Do you really see this happening? Can you see those buildings being knocked down and that runway being built at Heathrow?
Look, I've always been a bit sceptical about it. I've never been 100% for Heathrow, but I just think that we're at a stage that if we don't hurry up and get on with something, then I think we're going to regret this long term. We will lose jobs, we will damage our economy. There are other airports on the other side of the English Channel, in Netherlands, in France, that could potentially compete and take away the prominence of Heathrow as the major airport in this part of Europe. So I really think we need to just get on with the job and make a decision.
What about the politics and the party management? This arrangement that those prominent critics, Justine Greening or Boris Johnson, paying a lot of attention as the Prime Minister spoke. We saw the House Commons. To allow them limited time to object or criticise. What's that about? What do you make of that?
Well, I think MPs always have these issues when something's affecting our local community, whether it's a major road or a major, Crossrail's coming through my constituency. And originally, I was very unhappy with it because it was going to do a lot of damage to a particular part of the community. We got over that, and now we're very pleased that Crossrail's coming through. By the way, it's going to take an hour to get to Heathrow from Romford, so it's a good thing.
But tell us about what do you accept if the decision is made for Heathrow and you want people to get on with it? What do you say to Boris Johnson about what he should say about that decision and the Estuary Airport and whatever?
Yes, we don't know if there's going to be a free vote on this. We're not sure how it's going to pan out. But at the end of the day, MPs are entitled to raise concerns if it affects their constituencies. But we do have to make a decision. We have a duty as a government, as Parliament, to make a decision for the long-term interests of the United Kingdom.
What is going to happen to your party when you have the Mayor of London and people like yourself who say you don't want to see it happen, John McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor, and yet it is party policy as such to go with whatever the government goes for if it is seen as being an endorsement of that Davis Commission report? So it will be to support Heathrow. You're going to be split as well, aren't you?
Well, I think we do need to have a look at the report in detail.
We do, of course, but
and we've
let's
been
imagine...
we've been waiting for that.
Let's cast ourselves forward a little bit. You can't get away with that one.
We've been waiting for quite a while. But, yeah, there will be different views and there will be differing views, and I will have a different view because of how it affects my constituency. And when our 4 tests have been carefully looked through and analysed, then we'll probably come to a collective decision as a party.
Zach Goldsmith is saying he will stand down and create a by-election in Richmond Park, but has also been reported as saying that he will stand as an independent there. Should the Conservatives put up a candidate against him? They have to, haven't they? They're obliged to. It's, democracy. Or
Look, I personally hope he won't stand as an independent. David Davis
he said he's going to.
Stood in a by-election, which he personally created that by-election. Stood again as a Conservative.
He said he's going to.
Well, I hope he does stand as a Conservative. He may stand as independent. That's a matter for discussions between him and the party. Look, he's made a commitment to do this. He's a man of great integrity, and I respect his decision if he decides to call a by-election. But at the end of the day, democracy's got to decide where we build this new runway, and if it's Heathrow, we've just got to get on with it.
OK, let's move on. Now, to counter rogue landlords, the Liberal Democrats are calling for a London-wide licensing system for all people who rent out property. A few authorities do this now, like Newham, though the government hasn't decided yet whether it's going to allow the council to renew its scheme, as Andrew Cryan reports.
Officers from Newham Council this week making a surprise inspection.
Good morning.
Every landlord in the borough needs a licence from the local authority to operate. The result? Strict enforcement.
You won't be able to smell this, but there's quite a serious gas leak in this property. We think it's coming from the cooker. This is very dangerous. So we've got a room here, everyone in the property smoking. There's no fire detection, and then we've got a very tight kitchen with a cooker that's blocking the means of escape. So if there was a fire and you're in that room, you're not getting out. So this is unlit. This would have originally been part of the garden, but someone's thrown up some walls and turned that into their bathroom. And if we can come in, particularly unpleasant bathroom with damp and mould. The boiler's in there. We think the boiler's defective. The question is, how does this make you feel if you're living here, right? What impact does this have on your life? And if you're here, you can tell it's going to have a big impact. There's a dehumanising element to it. How does it make you feel to live here?
Well, this is a shame, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Yeah, but you haven't got anywhere else to go, so...
No, it's just I didn't plan anything because of, I'm busy with my job.
You're working and...
Yeah.
New research by the Liberal Democrats on the London Assembly, seen exclusively by Sunday Politics, has found that Newham are far and away the toughest council in London, taking 286 prosecutions against landlords in the last year we have figures for, some 70% of the London total. In contrast, 16 London boroughs have prosecuted fewer than 10, and a further 8 didn't prosecute any. The Lib Dems say they want Newham-style landlord licensing all over London.
Well, quite a few boroughs in London have got partial schemes for parts of their borough. What I want is just across London for there just to be a blanket licensing scheme. Landlords can offset the costs against their tax returns, so it doesn't actually cost them any more. What it does mean is it enables local authorities to have the officers in place who can take action where it's needed. And I think across London in the last year there have been 4,000 cases where very, very serious hazards have been found, whether it's not having electricity, not having safe sanitation. You know, people should not be living in London in those sorts of conditions.
So, come through, Andrew.
But would mandatory licensing risk punishing all the good landlords, just making them unfairly pay for all the rogue ones? Richard Blanco from the National Landlords Association has got concerns.
So a lot of landlords see it as unfair. In Newham, out of the 22,000 landlords that have been licensed, only 4% of them are deemed as being of concern. And I would hope that the local authority could use their existing resources to find that relatively small number of non-compliant landlords.
And the government seem to have no appetite for mandatory licensing.
There is an issue here that you're asking every single landlord, many of whom do a perfectly good job, to pay a fee. So there is an argument for concentrating on the properties or the particular geographical area where you think there's a problem. But as I said, in Newham's case, they were able to go ahead with the borough-wide scheme. I think that is the part of London where the problem's been its worst.
But could the government be about to call time on Newham's scheme? It's due to wind up next year, and the council have to reapply to see if it can continue.
Well, I'm going to wait and see the evidence first. I think it's my job, obviously, to look at the evidence of what they've done, and then I'll take a decision at that point in time. But what I do want your viewers to be clear about is the government is absolutely determined to crack down on rogue landlords. It's not just that it's a disgrace that vulnerable people should be forced to live in this kind of accommodation. It's also very unfair to the legitimate people that are good landlords that they're being undercut by people that are behaving this way.
So, could it be that rather than the Lib Dem call for schemes like Newham to be rolled out across the capital, that we're actually about to see it all scaled back?
The leader of Newham, Sir Robin Wales, is here. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
The point made there by the Landlords Association, that it's only a small number that you actually end up, tackling or who are offending, and yet everyone's paying. Is that fair?
Well, two things happen. First of all, with the scheme we're proposing, it's £1.80 a week per landlord, and if the government want to pay for it, that would be fine. But actually, there's two things happen. One, there's quite a lot of kind of amateur landlords. We can help, we can advise. It's quite a supportive scheme, wherever we can manage to do it. But there are a whole bunch of criminal landlords out there. They're packing people into homes, they're exploiting those people, and the amount of antisocial behaviour that goes on then across the areas where these homes are is astonishing. That's why we originally did it across the borough, and since we've done it, antisocial behaviour has fallen by 60% in the properties that we licensed.
But is there a kind of overzealousness here? You see the figures. You're far and away out there doing it.
Yeah, because we've got a lot of that.
Why is that? Why is you?
Because we put a lot of money into enforcement. But
is your problem worse than other places?
Yes, but it's quite bad in other places too. We just
so why don't they? Sorry, yeah. So why don't they do the same thing as you then?
Well, we spend a lot of money on enforcement. It costs us a lot of money. We decided it was important to our residents. I have 40 police officers that we pay for, and we can then task. I have 50 people working on enforcement. I have another 25 people allied to it. So it's about 120 people who spend not all the time, but a significant part of the time enforcing. It's not good having a licensing scheme unless you enforce. And we've got 900, we don't call them rogues, we call them criminal landlords. And what's happening is 900 potential properties become family homes instead of places that people live in the sort of conditions you saw. It's a way of improving the housing offer.
Butler, why aren't you in your local area? Why aren't Brent taking as many prosecutions? You must have problems similar to theirs.
Well, we don't have full landlord licensing in all of the areas in Brent. We have it in 3 areas. So we're not doing as well as Newham in that respect. I do think there is a problem with rogue landlords and they need to be weeded out. I think Brent prosecuted something like 50 rogue landlords. There was one that got lots of publicity.
But if you've got areas of Brent and Brent where it isn't a problem, you don't need to have a system there, though, do you? I presume that's just targeted and sensible, isn't it?
I think if there's a scheme that is useful to landlords as well, so that, you know, if landlords need help, if people are not paying their rents, it helps them. So it's vice versa. So it's not just a scheme that's attacking landlords, it's a scheme that's weeding out rogue landlords and making sure that people have a decent place to live, because those people renting in Brent has gone up 86%. It's a lot of people renting and spending a lot of money for really substandard accommodation.
And Andrew, you're in a position where one of your local authorities is about to introduce it. Do you think they should? Is it something that they should be spending their money on? Is it a big problem for you?
It's becoming a real problem. And I think that what Robin is saying is absolutely right. And also, if you don't deal with it across the board, you're going to allow lots of loopholes and people to slip through those loopholes. And also, you push it out. If it's dealt with in one borough but not the next borough, you're pushing the problem out further. And I think in Havering, we are taking decisive action to deal with this. My local council is introducing a scheme. Hopefully we'll work with Newham to look at the best practice to make sure this works in practical terms.
The Newham scheme is time limited. It's in the gift of the government whether they should extend it. Should that be the case? Is that devolved government at its best?
You know, sometimes you do have to let local authorities have flexibility.
Well, is this one of them?
So I'm not convinced that everything needs to go via the government. I think there is a problem in London. It's happening across the whole of the capital now, including outer London boroughs like Havering. We do need some form of licensing to clamp down on these people. They're ruining local communities and destroying nice family homes and turning it into a place that no one wants to live in.
You're organising it, you're paying for it, you're administering it, you're using the money, it's not a cost to government. Why should they be determining whether you get to carry this on?
My view is it should be dealt with locally, as most things should. And I mean, Brent's doing partial, that's fine. They may decide to expand it, but they'll know their local situation better than government. And so leaving us free to do it would be effective. And I'll give you an example where government doesn't do that. 21% of the people in my borough do not get the national minimum wage because government enforces. We've been campaigning for some years to enforce so that we stop exploiting people in the workplace as well as in where they live. But because government hasn't given us those powers, it's not enforced. Let local areas make those decisions locally and let us get on with it.
Good to have you here. And while you talk about local areas making local decisions, I haven't seen you since Sadiq Khan decided on river crossings. Doesn't include a bridge going across from Galleon's Reach, your pitch to, or part of the world, to the south. You wanted that, didn't you? You're disappointed?
I think what Sadiq said is there'll be a public transport link, and that's great, but we want more than that. So we will continue to campaign, along with most of East London, I have to say we want that bridge done. But to be fair, I think Sadiq's looking at things, he's considering it. He's not been in that long. Let's be fair. Let's wait 8 years. If he's failed for 8 years like Boris Johnson failed, then maybe we can start to criticise. Let's give the man a bit of a chance.
Even if he hasn't said a road yet, a bridge now, he's saying he might consider like the DLR, but not a road. I mean, you've been working on that for ages, haven't you?
Yeah, but we gave up with Boris because he wasn't going to do it. What did we get?
You're going to give up with Sadiq then?
Well, I'll tell you the difference. Boris gave us a cable car. Sadiq's talking about a proper public transport link. We need more. I don't think it's been quite appreciated yet, and that's going to be part of the ongoing discussion. But honestly, he's listening, we'll discuss it with him, and we'll keep campaigning for it. We're very hopeful and very optimistic, but I'll criticise him after 8 years of failure like Boris.
All right then, all right, we'll enjoy that when it happens. So Robin, thanks very much indeed for coming in. Now for the rest of the political news in 60 seconds.
London Mayor Sadiq Khan has begun considering a London visa so that businesses in the capital can continue to hire from abroad after an anticipated end to free movement from within the EU.
This is a critical issue for London business and higher education. Access to talent is a vital part of London's economy and culture, creating jobs and driving innovation.
The Conservatives have hit out at boundary review proposals for North West London in an attempt to keep Boris Johnson's seat intact. Under current proposals, Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson's seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip will be split between the new seat of Hillingdon and Uxbridge and the existing Ruislip, Northwood and Pinner seat, represented by Tory Minister Nick Hurd. The UK government is being hauled back before the courts over its failure to tackle air pollution. In a case beginning this week, a group called Client Earth is asking the High Court to order ministers to come up with a better plan for improving air quality.
Dawn, if London can cope with, and this is culturally and in its attitudes to more immigration and needs them for its economy, should it have some kind of special treatment, regionalised work permit system or visa?
Well, I think in order for there not to be huge panic, and currently there is, businesses are panicking, people who are already here are panicking whether they're going to have security of job, etc., then yes, I think it makes sense. Because, you know, the Mayor has got this campaign to say that London is open for business. He's running a very successful campaign around that. I think it's so important. We need London to keep thriving in the UK.
We've known your position for a long time, Andrew, but now it's a reality. Now Brexit is going to happen. Do you not have any concerns, reservations when you hear the City of London, big business, people saying they are really worried, and one of the big things they're worried about is skills and what we're going to say, we're closing our doors?
No, I'm not the slightest bit worried. I'm really pleased that we now have the opportunity to have a fair immigration system, and what it means that whether you're an Italian or an Indian, you get the same equal chance to come and live and work in Britain. The current policy by being in the EU is discrimination against the Commonwealth.
Could we say within London, though? Could we say make it a London-wide, allow a few more if we wanted them?
You see, it depends on how you define London. I'm in Romford, which is right on the edge of London. Is that really part of London in this context?
Say within the M25?
But as I said earlier, I think really it's a UK-wide policy that's needed. Definitely flexibility where there are regions that need particular types of immigration or people that need work permits for particular jobs. The government has to be sensible about implementing that policy, but it's got to be our policy.
OK, we're running out of time. I know the Mayor, Sadiq Khan, is going to choose, apparently, whether he wants to go ahead with this policy. We'll come back to it. To you both, thanks very much indeed.
I've been getting away with it all.